Hello, beautiful people. Hello, 77th. Once again, coming back at you guys with another video. This is a video that I've been kind of had in the oven or on the back burner, kind of waiting for the right time to come out with it. And I'm feeling like this is the right time. Um, and you can look at this as a prelude video to my Nine Keys series that I'll be coming out with soon, formerly known as Pilar's Nine Keys. It is now known as Noir's Nine Keys. And this is a video about love and individuation. Okay. We all know what love is, loving somebody, falling in love, things like that. Individuation is awakening, spiritual awakening, pretty much. Mastering all four sides of your mind. Okay. So I want to talk about when love love and individuation. So what I have here is the INFJ. Okay. And for the sake of this discussion, that's what I'm going to talk about. You know, so when you initially meet someone, you know, you initially see them. You'll see, how they look, how they present themselves. And then that'll lead you to want to go up to them and talk to them, things like that. So, and what you're most likely going to meet in that person is their persona, which is what I have here. Okay. And the persona is pretty much a mask, the mask of what that person wants the world to view them as, or who that person feels they are truly. Um, but the thing is, what happens over time, say, two people meet, the INFJ and pick any other type. And this is an unawakened INFJ, by the way, of course, as I've displayed the shadow in red upside down. Any future personality type I'm talking about that I display the shadow upside down, they're unawakened. Okay. So let's say on a date, you have an INFJ and you have, like I said, any other type, you know, you have the first couple of dates, that INFJ is presenting who they want to be viewed as by the world. More often than not, that will be the ESTP subconscious. Okay. In men, definitely. Okay. And some ladies, more often than not, you know, I do see this, but it's a toss up. It's a toss up. But in in any case, it's gonna be the person's persona who they want the world to view them as. Okay? With basically their mask, their persona. Okay? So you go the INFJ and this other person are going out, first couple dates, the other person's like, wow, the INFJ is awesome, they're cool, things like that. But what happens with two people as time goes on in a relationship, they get comfortable with each other. Okay? They get comfortable. And what starts to happen is this guy, or I should say the ego, kind of says, hey, I want somebody to know me, not necessarily stay here in the persona all the time. So, you may get to the fifth or sixth date, or maybe 10th date, and, the INFJ will get a pretty good gauge of the person and say, well, I want some of my NI to come out too, my FE to come out too, my TI, my TI. So they'll start to, you know, these guys here will start to leak out a little bit, okay? To see if the person will bite. If the person doesn't bite because of this, the person will stay here as they are more accepted here in their persona. So, but also, still, what tends to happen is the INFJ or the person, doesn't really matter what personality type, they're going to want the person to know the real them, or they're going to want to express who they really are. So to speak, they're going to get tired of performing or having a mask on. Okay. So what's going to happen is, or what happens is, say, for example, you know, when you initially meet a person, you got 10 dates, you're 10 dates in, maybe 15 dates in, to where both parties go, hey, I like you, you like me, let's go steady. Let's be in a relationship exclusively. Okay. So both people are now in a relationship, they're boyfriend, girlfriend. Okay. So a little while after, you'll start to notice, or how many of you have noticed, when you're in a relationship with somebody, they're one person when you initially meet them, and then maybe a couple months later, they're a totally different person. Well, I have the answer for that. It's because you were dating their persona, their mask. And the reason you're not experiencing this person anymore is because they're comfortable with you here. They're comfortable. So they don't feel like performing anymore. They don't want to perform anymore. They want to let out who they really are, or who they really are starts to leak out. That's probably a better way to put it. To where, sooner or later you're dealing with this person, the actual real person, you know, to where this guy, this subconscious, they may want to dress to the nines every time they go out, make sure they look presentable, things like that, which more often than not, you're going to be dating one of these. Okay. The censor. Okay. So someone's appearance, how they present themselves, who they are externally is very important to censors, because that's how they roll. Who a person is externally is everything, not necessarily who a person is internally. Okay. To them, who you are externally is a direct reflection of who you are internally. So if you are presenting yourself in an excellent way, you're always dressing to the nines, you know, saying all the right things, then they're going to take that as, oh, this person they're going to look at the appearance of the person, or who the person is externally, and base everything off of that. Okay. And then that's just going to be it. There's no deeper looking into anything. Okay. So, and like I said, the sensor makes up 75% of the entire planet. So, like I've also said, this is how the framework of the entire world is, who a person is externally. Okay. But you also have to be consistent with that appearance. Okay. You also have to be consistent. Okay. Because they'll catch on to that. They'll catch on. But moving on. Like I said, over time, and like I said, I'm just using the INFJ for example. This is every single type across the planet, across Earth. 99.9% of humans do this. They do this. They present a persona. Okay. So, like I said, As time goes on, you're going to see, wow, what happened to the person I met a couple months ago? This person doesn't care about looking good as much anymore. This person doesn't care about going to the gym as much anymore, or whatever they were doing in the beginning. Being polite, opening doors all the time. I'm a guy, so I'm speaking as a guy. So you'll start to notice these things, and you're like, and then, if there were no arguments, no disagreements in the first couple months, but both parties seemed in sync, then you're like, what's going on? Because the person's true who they are is starting to leak out, and is fully there. This guy has done, so to speak, their job in a way. So this is more or less how it works, you know, or the age old question, like why, when you initially meet somebody, then fast forward, 3, 4, 5, 6 months later, they're a completely different person in the relationship. They let their, quote unquote, they're letting their hair down. What that means is they put their persona or their mask on the shelf, and they are who they really are. Okay, whoever that may be, as the person is unawakened anyway. So it could be, you know, any combination of these, unconsciously, that is, unconsciously. But what I've discovered is, from the individuation aspect, you are awakened. Okay, you are awakened. So an awakened person is not going to necessarily put on a mask as the main thing that is important to them is being who they truly are initially. Okay. So when you're dealing with an awakened person, what's going to happen is, you're going to get awakened all four sides. Okay. All four sides are going to be awakened. Okay. So pretty much the whole stack, or the person is going to be a master of all four sides of their mind. So there will not be any reason or need to do this, because that just won't make any sense. That is the complete opposite of awakened FI. And I'm saying FI, you know, I'm saying FI, but it's the whole stack, not just one function is awakened. It's all four sides. So dealing with an awakened person versus an unawakened person, like I said, you're going to get the persona with an unawakened person. With an awakened person, you're going to get awakening, all four sides mastered. So a person that's that would be dating an awakened person, you're going to get who that person truly is from the get-go. Okay, because when you have FI unawakened, it's more about acceptance. In the case of FE, here, in the case of FE, the person is putting on a show or a mask because they fear who they truly are will not be accepted, or they feel this about themselves in some form or fashion. Okay, they feel this way about themselves, insecure. I have to put on a mask. I have to be someone that I'm not, to be accepted, to fit in, because I don't feel that who I truly am will be accepted. Okay. So that would be the reason why people put on a mask in the first place. 99% of society is putting on a mask when they go out. 99%. So in some shape or form. So, but what you want to do is it's not necessarily, what you want to do is actually look in the mirror at yourself. Okay. You know, for me, I'm a devout Christian. I've said it many times. My road to awakening started with me getting on my knees, asking God for forgiveness to help me work on me because I was not happy with the person that I was. Who I was at a certain time in my life was not a representation of who I truly am. And I had to look in the mirror at myself and say, what is going on? Why am I at this point in my life? This is not who I am. This is not who I am. So I got down on my knees and I asked God for forgiveness to help me, you know, live, draw myself closer to Him, develop more of an internal, deep relationship with Him, and to help me be a better person, to myself. Okay. So that was more my road to awakening. And some 3 years later, I am individuated. Okay. So, I mean, like I said, when you are awakened, it doesn't even make sense to be insecure because those types of, insecure, you know, those types of issues are non-existent. It doesn't even make sense. So they're not even in my vocabulary of thinking throughout the day, every day. So, these things are out. Insecurities, you know, trauma issues, childhood, you know, baggage, trauma, things like that. When you're awakened, all of that stuff is taken care of. You have looked in the mirror, you have taken care of all of those things internally, truly to your depth. Okay. So, but what I wanted to actually say about the love thing in individuation is I've more or less touched on it in other videos here and there, but didn't really go in depth about it. So I'm going to actually, kind of erase some of this. You guys can go back, and look at it. Okay. But I kind of want to make some room here. So, okay. When you are individuated, okay, like I said, you are awakened. So it's more about connecting with somebody with who you truly are. When you have awakened uh, when you have awakened your FI, authenticity is king. Authenticity, it's like you can't, your FI will not allow you to make one step. It will not allow you to do anything without it being, true to you. So there's no such thing as a mask. There's no such thing as any of that. When your FI is awakened, it's all about raw, pure authenticity, who you are. So, and I'm running out of time. I have about 10 minutes left. So, more or less, what I want to say is when you are individuated, you are a master of yourself. So, now in the terms of love, I've said this, there is no love if both people are not individuated. Okay. And as I've said in the beginning of the video, normally people meet people, but they're only falling in love with the person's persona. They're not necessarily falling in love with every aspect of who they are. Okay? Because the person themselves, they don't know who they are in totality themselves. So, I mean, they think the persona is who they are, but it's not. So that's where the divorce rate and things like that come in, because people get married, and like I've said, all they're doing when two unawakened people are in a relationship, this is all that's going on. All you're doing is projecting your shadow onto the other person. That is all you're doing, is projecting your shadow onto the other person if you are unawakened. Okay? I hope I said that loud and clear. All you're doing is projecting your shadow onto the other person. Okay? So, two people in a relationship, 20, 30 years, marriage, whatever, you know, in SI world, that is considered commendable. You know, people staying together 20, 30 years, they're miserable. They can't stand each other, all the things, but they've stuck it out. They've stuck it out and they stayed together. You get it. These types of things are more respected as marriage, because to a censor, arguments happen, disagreements happen, all this stuff happens in relationships that are that long. So they don't understand that if two people are awakened and individuated, this doesn't exist. This doesn't exist. Okay, there's no dumping a shadow onto the other person. There's none of that. Okay? So, and that's where I come in. That's where the MBTI has led me in my life. Awakening, well, it was definitely, my awakening came from Christ, but finding out the deeper aspects of myself. The MBTI has changed my life as far as that. And ever since March of 2023, I have not looked back. And when I meet people, throughout the day, when I tell them about the MBTI, I tell them the same thing. And I'm telling you guys that. Um, the key no, is for to be individuated entering a relationship. Nobody should even be dating if they're not individuated. You must individuate, master yourself, mind, body, and soul before anybody else, or before you expect anybody else to be that to you. Okay? So, so for example, and I got 5 minutes left. So, for example, how do you get to know, you know, all four sides of someone's mind? Well, I'll kind of take you through briefly with me. With me, like I said, my ego is the INFJ. So, with my INFJ ego, you have to come with this right here. Okay? And that relates to this. You have to come with depth. You have to. You have to. Now, that will be very hard for these guys because of everything I've said about dysfunction. That's very hard. Okay? So, with me and I, you got to come with depth. Okay? Now, I believe every side of everyone's mind is real, you know. So, the ESTP, you know, professional athlete. So with my ESTP side is going to want someone that's in shape, that cares about their body, is at least doing some type of working out at least 2, 3 days a week. You're doing something to keep yourself in shape, because I'm like that. I walk, jog 2 miles every day. So, and I'm also just starting to go to the gym as well, from working out at the park facilities. I want to start getting into more weight training. So with my ISTJ side, you have to be very analytical, book smart, statistics, things like that, which I believe is where my sapiosexualness comes from my ISTJ side, as ISTJs are very analytical. So, and with NE or my ENFP shadow, she's very passionate, about any related things, about seeing the potential in people, about the stars, the cosmos, you name it. So a person has to come with all four of these things, to for me to be impressed as far as love and individuation. But everybody has these things in them as well. So it's these things are very important. And like I said, people will go 20, 30, 10 years or be in any type of span of time in a relationship and not know the full aspect of who they're with, and vice versa, because they don't know themselves that well. And that's what I want to present. Like I said, nobody should be dating anybody if they're not individuated. Only two individuated people should be dating. Only. Okay. So that's my take, or a brief take on love and individuation. As my time is getting ready to run out, I do want to touch on more things. So I'll probably make a part two or a part three in the future. But for now, this is 70 Severance signing out.